Hey folks, so I have been posting some photos lately from the diorama project that I'm working on, and one of the things that people have been curious about are the candles that I'm using in it. So I wanted to show a quick tutorial on how I'm doing those. And it's real simple. It's, cardstock and hot melt glue. You just need like an X-Acto knife. And I bought these LEDs. They are flickering LEDs. So they have kind of a firelight effect, and they've got a little, like, I don't know, what is that, like 8-inch lead on them. And these are like $3 or $4 for a pack of 20 or something on Amazon. But you can also salvage them out of these dollar store tea lights if you don't mind cracking them open. But anyway, I'm just gonna show you how I put these candles together because it's crazy simple. Start with a sheet of cardstock here, and I'm just gonna line this up kind of evenly here and cut off, let's call it 1 inch, although it doesn't have to be precisely measured. This is just kind of an arbitrary thing. If you look at the diorama project, I made some of them a little longer and some of them a little shorter, but we just need like a little strip. And then we're just gonna take that and we're gonna curl that strip. You might be used to doing that with a pair of scissors, but you can do it really with any reasonably flat object. Will work just as well. But it works a little easier if you put a bit of curl on it to begin with. So the other thing that we're going to be using is a little scrap of XPS foam. And this is stuff that you can get in big, like 2-foot square sheets, or you can actually buy like 4x8 sheets at Home Depot or Lowe's. But for little stuff, you're not going to need that much. So little like 2x2 squares, like $5. Or you can get dollar store foam core and just peel the paper off of it, and you're left with the foam inside, which is fantastic for doing this kind of little miniatures crafting and stuff. I learned about it from watching crafting videos on YouTube. But I like the green stuff because it's just a little more solid, and yeah. Anyway, so I'm just gonna take my hobby knife here. I'm gonna carve off a little section of this XPS foam, and I'm just gonna use that to make a little candle holder. And I'm not too worried about getting this exact, and you'll see why in a second. But stuff cuts easy with an X-Acto knife, and it sands. So you can just take a little sheet of sandpaper, and I'm just gonna kind of sand that real quick to polish it off a bit. And you can see there where I had the kind of sharp edges where I cut it mostly to shape and then just sand it into something a little more rounded. And I'm going to do one more little piece off of that. Again, I'm just going to kind of cut into shape here. put that down so I don't hurt myself. All right, so those are my two little shapes there, and I'm just going to put a quick dab of hot melt glue on there, and stick that on there, and a nice little old-timey candle holder. So the one other thing that we're going to do with that, just to get the LED in there, is we're just going to take the X-Acto knife and kind of drill out a hole. Or if you have it, it'll make things easier, or just a drill bit, and you can just drill right through it, and that'll give you a decent hole. Again, it doesn't have to be super exact because that's going to get covered with hot melt glue and everything, and you won't be able to see it. So the other thing that I have here is just a little piece of dowel, but I'm going to start by just taking off maybe an inch and a half of my cardstock there, and we're just going to roll that up. Make sure that gets like a nice roll there. And I have been using, because I wanted them to be fairly uniform, so I was just using this little wooden dowel to kind of wrap cardstock around and give it a decent uniform length and everything, or uniform thickness. And you can use a glue stick or white glue or whatever, but I like hot melt glue because I am super impatient and it works really, really fast. So there we go. And then we're just going to take a little bit here. And drop that right on top of that hole we made with the drill bit. And then I'm just going to take the back end of it, or you can use the dowel or whatever, and I'm just going to kind of make sure that it's lined up and that there is no glue in the way of anything inside there. Because sometimes when you put the glue around the edge, it'll get caught up a little like that. And that's not 100% solid, so I'm just gonna throw another little drop on there, and in a moment we'll make that look pretty and cool and everything. But for the immediate moment, it's on there fairly straight-ish. All right, so I did this part on my melamine countertop here that's under this pad, but you can use, I don't know, I'm going to try this stainless steel ruler. And I find this will go a little quicker if you have a low temperature glue gun, or if you have one that has a dual temperature. Mine is on low here. But I am just going to make a little kind of shape there and kind of draw it out a little bit. That might be a little bit bigger than we needed, but it'll do. So you can see that's just a little shape. But I used the melamine countertop here because stuff peels off of it pretty easily. I'm hoping it'll peel off this steel ruler also pretty easily. I think like a nonstick cookie sheet would probably work awesome, but might not want to try that on one you're super attached to. At least not the first time. Anyway, once that's cooled off, we're just gonna peel it off, and it comes right off that. And we are left with that little doohickey there, which I'm actually just gonna kind of trim a little bit into shape. I'll be a little, retentive with that, just because. All right, so I sharpened that a bit. And basically, we are just going to glue that right into the top of our candle here. It'll look a little better if like the bulbous sort of side is facing out or facing towards wherever you're going to set this. So I'm just going to set that in like that. And see, it's actually starting to look like a candle now, which is pretty cool. Then we're just going to take our glue gun and we're going to just run some glue down from the top, down the sides, so it looks like dripping candle wax. That's also a really good way to cover the seam there. And we can put a little bit at the base so it kind of looks like some candle wax pooled up there. I get those a little bit random, but you can see there that we've got our dripping candle wax. I'm going to set that down for a second and let it cool. And I'm going to grab a little bit of paint. So I'm just going to grab a little sheet of cardstock. I use a lot of cardstock, partly for crafts and partly just because it makes a really convenient little miniature drop cloth. So I am going to make this candle, let's see, I've got some warm white, and that's a warm white paint, or actually let's do antique parchment. You know what, I'm gonna do both. And then I've got some gold here we'll do for the little candle holder. All right. A couple brushes here. They're a little damp, but that's okay. All right, so this is all right. This is cooled off. Again, that's the thing I love about hot melt glue is that it cools and dries very quickly, and I am a super impatient person. I'm just going to grab a little bit of our antique white. We just need a couple drops, really, and I'll make a mess. And do a little bit of the brighter, more traditional white there, and a little drop of the gold metallic. And these are all like, again, dollar store, 2 for $1 tea lights, dollar store foam core, piece of poster board, 50-cent Walmart craft paints. This is not a super expensive hobby, which is nice. So I am going to go in here with this bright white, and we're just going to paint the candle. And I am not painting the candle flame that goes up above it. Theoretically, I suppose you could probably buy some translucent paints and paint that like red and orange and yellow and whatnot, or blue if it's more of like a fantasy setting or something. But the lights that come in these little tea lights and the LED lights that I bought are already like supposed to look like candlelight. They're yellow orange and they flicker, and so really that is fine. So all right, just did a little bit of white there, and then we're going to go in with the gold. And you may ask why I did the white first and the gold second. And the answer to that is because sometimes I do not think things through. And sometimes it is a little easier to go around the part you've already painted. And we're just going to pretend that that was the reason rather than the not thinking things through part. But you know, your mileage may vary, whatever you want to do. And you know, if you wanted to do a slightly better job with this, I would recommend before painting, giving it a quick coat of like Mod Podge, or you can make your own kind of Mod Podge type quick coat. A lot of the people that do like D&D terrain crafting will make this. I use one that was developed by the guy that does the Terraino YouTube channel. But basically, his version is a mix of acrylic paint, water, and just regular white PVA glue, like regular school glue. You mix those together in more or less equal parts, and you get something that's like a slightly thinner Mod Podge. And it basically is just a really nice, like, coat that kind of glues everything together and gives it a nice base coat that's easy to paint. So, you know, if I were smart and not just doing a quick little project here, I would probably give it a coat or two of that. The other little trick I learned from the YouTube channel over at Black Magic Craft was to mix black paint in with your Mod Podge, although you can use other colors too, and it gives it a really nice, you know, base coat to go and paint over. So there, I just used that wooden dowel because I knew it would fit, and it's a good way to hold that. But you can see our candle there on its little candle holder. Some little wax dripping down. We're just going to give that a second for the paint to dry. And basically from there, it's really just a matter of jamming that LED light up into it. Again, that's where the dowel is going now. And like if you had a little diorama or a dollhouse or, you know, whatever project you're working on, you can just run the wire up through like a little tabletop or something. But whatever you want to do with that. So I'm just going to give that a second or two to dry and be right back. Okay, so that's had a couple minutes to dry, and I just want to add one little more bit of detailing to it with a little bit of a black wash. Now, wash is basically just, it's basically just watered down black paint with a couple drops of dish soap in it. And the reason you do that is because the dish soap helps it sheet a little better. Like you see how it's kind of beating up instead of sticking to the bottle. That's nice, and the wash just very quickly is going to go on there, and it doesn't have to be pretty. I'm actually going to wipe away most of it. But what that will do is kind of pull up in some of the cracks and some of the pits and details and stuff. And if it were a less contrasting color, I would just kind of let it sit there and pull up and dry, but because it's such a dark color against such a light color, I'm just going to go in with a paper towel here and blot some of it off. And you can just see how that kind of brings out the candle wax drips and some of the texture and stuff. And it's kind of an optional step for something like this. But it really makes them smaller, like especially the more detailed the model is, the more the wash will just kind of make it really pop with the details. And if I wasn't being lazy and had a little more time, I would have mixed wash that wasn't quite as dark, maybe just kind of a light gray to contrast with the white paint on here. It would have been a lot more subtle, but you know, subtlety has never really been one of my strong suits. So anyway, that's our candle. From there, all we got to do is stuff that LED up into it. And again, if you want to put a few drops of hot melt glue in there to kind of cement it in place, we can do that. Anyway, there it is with the flickering LED and all put together and plugged into a 9-volt battery, and that's what it looks like when it's lit up. So pretty cool little project, and yeah, that's all I got, but hopefully that helps if anyone was curious how I put those together, and have fun.